Hi, folks. This is Bark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. I wanted to start out by explaining why I enjoy doing these podcasts as much as I do. Maybe you don't enjoy them as much as I do, but I love them. And main reason is because I'm a retired professor, sociology professor, retired just a little over a year ago. And for me, this is a continuation of a major part of my professorship, which was teaching. My research is a continuation of another part of my professorship, but I love these podcasts because they allow me to engage with people, hopefully. And I really do hope that a lot of you are watching. Um, I don't make any money off of this. I never will. I don't want to make money off of it. As I've said before, I literally don't need it. Uh, by pure accident, I ended up as a multimillionaire, nouveau riche. I don't keep any money here in my home, in case you're wondering. Uh, all the money is in the hands of my fiduciary and in the hands, I guess, of the college where I worked, and they send me monthly paychecks, which are actually the same, even maybe slightly less than I was making as a professor. So I literally only have about $10 or $20 in cash here. I don't keep money around my condo. That's it. And my condo was a wreck. You would not want to see it anyway. But regardless, this is an opportunity for me, a golden opportunity that would not have been possible without the technology of YouTube, and which allows me to do what I really love doing, which is communication and communicating with an audience. And now I can communicate on the subjects that I genuinely want to communicate on. As a professor, could I do that? Yeah, but not as much. I would often have to lecture on things that really did not interest me personally, but they were a part of the course, so I couldn't ignore them. But now I can ignore things and I can just talk about stuff that I love to do. So I really enjoy doing these podcasts for that reason. The topic of this podcast is politics and partisanship. Now, if you have read the main page of the Institute, which is linked right below this podcast, but if you want to go there, it is dmr.institute, one of those new TLDs, higher TLDs, top level domains. And I think you might like it, hopefully, and explore some of the different materials I have placed there under the various drop-down menus on the main page. I have nothing against politics. I do have something against partisanship. Now, although I am both non-political or apolitical and nonpartisan, do I have any objection to people being political? No. If people think that they can bring about change by engaging in political activity, good for them. And I hope that they are successful. That is not what I feel that I can do the best. And so for me, in place of politics, I do Antifa. And that is basically for me, as I've explained earlier, primarily struggling or working for the liberation of the third world from the authoritarianism of the first world. So to me, that's not political. I'm not involved in any kind of political activity. I don't take part in rallies or anything like that. When I was a kid, I did. I used to go to rallies and demonstrations. I used to hand out, well, I would try to get people to sign petitions. I was a complete failure, but then again, we were all complete failures in our organization. Nobody wanted to sign those petitions. But does that mean that I think that politics is completely useless? No, I don't think that. And people who find some value in political activity, including other critical realists, other Maoist third worldists, good for you. And I hope that you are successful, but it is not what I have chosen to do for myself. Second, partisanship. Now, partisanship is something which I am opposed to in principle, and I will tell you why. It is not for the reason that many people are opposed to it. A lot of people don't seem to like partisanship because they think it's disunifying, or it creates dissension, or it cuts off people from one another. Those things may be true, and I'm not denying that that may be negative in and of itself. Partisanship in and of itself may be negative because by definition, it is partisanship, meaning it is disunifying. But that's not really the reason why I personally dislike partisanship. Why I dislike it is because I don't think that it is a successful route to establishing socialism in the third world. I just don't think it is. Even in the first world, every 4 years, when there is a presidential election here in the US, there are always a lot of self-proclaimed communists who run for office, people representing every imaginable communist party. Problem: they have no ballot access. No ballot access at all. So their campaigns are relatively useless. Now, does that mean that they can't win? No, they could win, but the only way they could win would be through write-in votes. And how many people have ever won president through a write-in vote? Maybe there have been some, but no one I'm aware of. So in order really to have a chance of being elected as president, first, you really need to be a Democrat or a Republican. And second, you have to have ballot access. Now, as a communist, nobody is going to give me ballot access. I simply won't get it. And that is the same with all the communists I see who are running for president. They simply don't have ballot access, meaning when you go to the election booth and you look there, their names are not on the list. You can't vote for them, right? You can't vote for, even if you want to, you can't find their names. They're not on the list, as an example of this. And how I realized that many people who even try to run for president this way recognize its futility. Every 4 years, there are these two commies who run for president. Last time, the guy's running mate, the vice presidential candidate, was only 29 years old. What does that mean? Well, could they have been elected president? I'm not sure. I mean, can somebody under 35 in the US be elected vice president? I know someone under 35 cannot be elected president, Not sure about the vice presidential bit, but say the president were to die, and then the first person to succeed the president would be the VP. And that VP was only in his late 20s or her late 20s. That person could not succeed the president. Instead, it would go to the Speaker of the House. And very commonly, the Speaker of the House does not belong to the same political party as the president or the vice president. So I don't really see what the point is of running for president in a partisanship sense as a communist. I just don't know why someone would even bother doing it. To me, it seems like the ultimate waste of time. First of all, there's no way you can possibly win. A communist is never going to get enough votes to be president of the United States. It doesn't matter. Yeah, we passed McCarthyism, but the United States is still a very anti-communist country, and we are not alone. The West in general, the global North in general, the First World in general is very anti-communist. A communist is not going to be elected president. It simply won't happen. Now, will somebody on the far right be elected? Yeah, that can happen. In fact, arguably, it has happened when Donald Trump was elected. Now, you may or may not agree that Trump was on the far right. I'm not actually entirely convinced myself, but he ran for the nomination of the Republican Party. He got the nomination, and ultimately, he was elected president. And guess what? Now he wants to be president again. And in spite of the fact that he has 30 pending cases, I believe 30 at least cases involving felony convictions, and I believe, I may be wrong on the numbers, 81 felony counts. It's something like that. Despite all that stuff, Trump is still leading the pack. He's still leading the pack. Why? I don't know. Today, Ron DeSantis, who was at one time considered to be the leading contender, has dropped out. And guess what? He has supported Donald Trump. Well, what that does is that makes Nikki Haley the clear second place candidate on the Republican side. So will Nikki Haley be the next president? I don't know. I'm not a prophet, or I'm a very bad one, so I can't predict the future. But regardless, Nikki Haley is not a communist. So the idea of a communist becoming president of the United States, to me, is on its surface an absurd idea. Partisanship, therefore, to me, is not a bad thing, primarily because it is disunifying, although it is disunifying, which, depending upon your perspective, you may or may not see as bad. Okay, maybe that's a bad thing. That's not my focus. The point is that partisanship is not going to bring about communism. By electing a person, say a communist, as president of the United States, that would not turn the United States into a communist country. So, in other words, even if a member of some Communist Party got elected by who knows what means. It's kind of unimaginable to me, but maybe it could happen. You still have to deal with the House of Representatives, the Senate, the Supreme Court, who are not going to be communist or will unlikely be communist. And they are not going to side with the president. And laws are proposed or passed, I should say, by Congress. The president can veto them, and Congress can also override that veto if they want to. So really, when it comes to foreign policy, the president has some degree of power. When it comes to domestic policy, the president has very little power. Instead, the Congress is where the power really lies. So even if you like partisanship, and I can see why somebody might like it to an extent. I mean, it's like a game. It's like playing Monopoly, maybe. I don't know. Maybe like playing Scruples, that old game. If you're old enough to remember Scruples, I think you could still buy it or play it online or something. What are the scruples of the person who's president? Well, even if those scruples are communist, so what? That person will not be able to enforce her or his scruples on the rest of the country. So it will be a failed endeavor from the start. Okay? So that is why I oppose partisanship. As a Maoist, third worldist, or as I say, a heterodox Maoist, and a socialist from below, third worldist, which I think is clearer, I support communism. And I really want the third world to adopt a communist perspective and to work hard through revolution to establish communism throughout the third world. Maybe different countries having different revolutions, each producing communism in their own country. Maybe different communisms, like Stalin's idea of socialism in one country, maybe, where the socialism or communism that might work in one country might not work in another country, or at least one shouldn't begin by assuming that it would without evidence, right? I think that assumption is illogical. You know, one should look at a country, examine its own particular culture, which I do as a sociologist, and consider what type of communism would be best for that particular country. Or maybe even divide a country in parts and have different communisms in different parts of one country. I don't know. I'm just extrapolating. I have no idea. But regardless, there is no way that any of those places will most likely be communist, at least at the beginning, and at least not with a revolution. That is why revolution is so important. And can there be a revolution in the first world? Well, can is a pretty broad term. I guess anything can happen. I mean, it might snow tomorrow here in Mission, Texas, even though it never has before. It can. Is it going to? No. So, I mean, you can certainly say that certain things can happen. The question is, will they actually happen? And I think that establishing revolutions in the first world is an unrealistic objective. And that is why communism needs to start in the third world, but not through partisanship, not through partisanship, by finding good communists to run the country, to elect good communists. What's the point of having parties, different parties, like that compete with each other? Why not have just one communist party? Why have multiple ones? There's no reason for multiple communist parties. One of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the major reasons I think why communism has been a failed project in the first world since it was started by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels is because communism very quickly divided into numerous tendencies and parties. And in many cases, those parties literally hate one another. They want nothing to do with one another. In some cases, they even deny that the other communists are communists. So that would not be very helpful. No, we don't need that kind of partisanship in the world. We need communism. And we don't need partisanship because partisanship is not, in my opinion, a successful approach to establishing communism in the third world and hopefully, eventually, although I don't think it'll be for a long time, if ever, in the first world as well. This has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the collective, for what is it the collective for? Oh, let me think for a second. I can't think of it. Wait a minute. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It is the collective for dialectical metarealism. Obviously, I'm just playing games. And dialectical metarealism is my own particular perspective or approach for establishing communism in the third world. Anyway, be well. Take care. Bye-bye.